Today we're going to be having a look at our document solution, the attaching of documents, so document storage, document distribution, and document automation. We're going to talk about all three today, but we're also going to touch on some of the other touch points within the ecosystem, because Sicon Documents is so integrated into many of our products and of course the core Sage 200 solution. My plan today to showcase how documents works is to actually utilize Sicon approvals to get a purchase order into Sage, which effectively becomes our document store for all of the appropriate documents, quotations, purchase order confirmations, purchase order that goes out in terms of distribution, goods receiving, and subsequent invoice. And we're going to follow that journey all the way through to document automation. You'll see my Sicon standard umbrella as the product that we're going to choose today to follow a document through. And as we're doing that, you'll also see in here that we have the last purchase order number of 5159, which I'm going to get a new one of 5160. The end game is that I want an invoice to be recognized by document automation, our OCR solution. And that is sitting here ready and waiting to go. Okay, so there's our Sicon standard umbrella. We're also going to have some kettles on there as well so that we can expand that out and see how it's going to treat it. This particular invoice is going to match to a purchase order number. Document automation, of course, is capable of recognizing invoices that go straight to the purchase ledger as well that don't need to match to a purchase order. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on, but I wanted you to see what the end game is. So I've already got my invoice from the supplier, which we're going to use later on in this journey. Let's just pop ourselves into Sicon approvals. You'll see that I'm logging in to a user called Lewis, and he is my requisitioner. And we are going to create a new one. But I'm going to put a quick requisition on, and I want to accompany my requisition with some documents. Okay, so let's just pop ourselves in and add my stock items. We're going to buy them from Everest. And of course, our stock items are going to be my Sicon Super Duper umbrella. So let's just go in and put our umbrella in. There it is, into the warehouse. Nice little image popping up in here as well. So we start looking at that entire documents journey all the way through. Go in here. So let's put my 6 in there, and we're going to have them at a purchase price of £30. If you are using Sicon projects, then we can, of course, put the project into the requisition as well. And there is also functionality inside of document automation to match to projects too. For the purpose of today's exercise, I'm not going to add that in. I'm just simply going to say save to this. Let's just put my kettles in here as well. So we're going to have some kettles, and we'll have 2 of these as well. I'm going to confirm with the goods received as well, and we're simply going to see my kettles at £75. But the most important thing for me today is that I want to be able to show you that we can add the quotation at this point inside of approvals. So there's my 2 lines, and we'll just go into the justification, and I'm going to add myself a quote, which can simply be dropped in. If I was doing this on a smart device, it would actually activate the camera, but we're just going to upload a file into here, which will be a copy of the quote, which for today's purposes will just be a Sage logo. I'm going to add some notes as well. Test for Nathan. And again, document, however, I want to follow me through the entire journey. And that's the important thing about approvals, is that the document that I add in here, if I've got a documents license back inside of Sage, I'll be able to see that document with the right permissions and the right user licenses. So again, let's just go in and save and submit this. Off it will go for approval. There's my requisition 21780. That's going to go to Michelle for approval. So we'll just pop in as Michelle, and you'll see that in Michelle's requisitions, she does indeed have an Everest requisition 21780 with an attachment for us to be able to see. Not even going to go into the full approval process, guys. I'm literally just going to go in and approve it from here so that we can actually have our approved purchase order. Let's just pop back in as Lewis, just so that you can see that that will have gone through the journey. So in his existing requisitions, we should see that he has nothing submitted for Everest, and in approved, we will see this one is going through for approval. Just updating at this point in time. That will assign it a Sage purchase order number of 5160 at some point in a couple of seconds. I'm always a little bit quick for it, and it will take with it that document. And that's my first point of call into Sage. Okay, so we're just going to pop ourselves back into Sage. Just refresh our list. There, of course, is my purchase order 5160. And the first thing that I'm going to do in here is see that this particular document has not yet been printed. There are facilities inside of approvals for the users to be able to produce their own purchase orders off the back of an approved purchase order, approved requisition, for the system to automatically generate it. But for a lot of our customers, they will actually want the users inside of Sage to be the ones that actually send out the purchase orders. And that's what we're going to do using Sicon documents today. So as you can see, these are yet to be received. So we're going to do a little bit of that in just a second. But the most important thing that I wanted to show you was, of course, that I do indeed have a document attached to it. That document was attached by the approvals user for the approver to be able to see, and now I can see it against this particular purchase order inside of Sage. Fantastic. So that's my first place. Now that it exists as a fully fledged purchase order, we're going to do the second bit of Sicon documents, which is to actually send my documentation out. So that purchase order going to go out the door. Before I do that, let me just take you back into the stock list, where we're just going to go into my standard umbrella. And against this particular stock item, you'll see that, again, anywhere that you see those add documents, view documents, that's Sicon documents doing its thing. We can switch on Sicon documents, or it is switched on, I should say, in sales ledger, purchase ledger, sales order processing, purchase order processing. It's in the cash book, the nominal ledger, and it's in a variety of the Sicon modules. We'll go into these settings in just a moment, and you'll actually see where we actually integrate those modules. Inside of stock, which is the other one that we do it against, you'll see that I can, of course, attach documentation. So if I go in and view my documents, I can see I've got a product image, and I can see I've got a product specification. Those documents are not only there for reference, they are also there so that I can use them when I send documentation outside of Sage. So for your outbound documentation, for your purchase orders that are going out, for your remittances, for your statements, for your dispatch notes, etc., I can accompany those with documents that I've attached to the stock item. Not only that, but the document that goes out will have the client's header page, their brand and their background, and potentially a set of T's and C's that can go with it as well. Those T's and C's, those header pages, those backgrounds can be tailored against criteria that you might set. Again, I'm going to take you into the settings in just a second so you can see how that works. But in my scenario today, I've said in document distribution, I'm going to take that product image when I send out a purchase order. I'm going to take that product specification when I send out a purchase order. I'm going to do likewise when I send out a sales order acknowledgement. I could do the same when I'm sending out the quote. So if your customers would like a quotation for 7 different items, it will take the product specifications and the images for all of those items. So again, it becomes increasingly more clever as the system goes on and as we tie things in together. Okay, so we're literally just going to go in and look at that purchase order one more time, because what I want you to see is that when I produce it, so I'm simply going to say that I'd like to print. I'll only print my one today, but of course, the standard process would be that you've got a variety of new purchase orders that are now live in the system. We're going to print them all. I'm just going to display my unprinted ones. We'll see our one here at the bottom, and I'll just print this one. We're not going to use the standard print function inside of Sage. We're going to use this little button over here called Email and Archive, and that will activate the Sicon document distribution functionality. My system's actually set up so that it will actually go out to my draft so that I can see it before it's sent off. But there are settings in document distribution to determine whether or not it goes to your drafts or whether it simply goes out the door. Customers can create their own tailored templates, including things like hyperlinks and even HTML that they would like to send out at that point in time. So I'm going to hit that email and archive button, and it will, of course, send out my purchase order. But not only will it send the purchase order out, but it will also archive it against the actual purchase order itself. Now, of course, as I mentioned before, mine's going to go into my drafts so that you can see it as opposed to being sent out the door. So let's have a little look in my drafts, and you should see purchase order 5160 together with all of the documentation that I told it to take with it. So it has the product image from the umbrella, it has the product specification, it has my product image for the kettle and my certification for the kettle, accompanying a tailored email of your design, templates that you can create, and the purchase order itself, of course, with the header page determined by your client, their brand and their background, and a set of T's and C's that goes with it. Like I say, these T's and C's, backgrounds and header pages can be tailored with reference to criteria. So if you have a different set of T's and C's for international suppliers than you do for UK suppliers, absolutely fine. If you manage that via an analysis code, if you manage that via a country code, etc., then you can determine what type of information accompanies the standard Sage purchase order report as it's sent out the door. But really, really easy to use. I'm going to show you that ever so quickly before we look back at our purchase order. Okay, so we're just going to go to settings and distribution settings, and you'll see each of those entities that we can actually create a document for has a default set of header pages, backgrounds, and terms and conditions. So in the case of my purchase order, I'm sending out this header page, this background, these set of terms and conditions. In the case of my sales order, that might be different, but that's where they're stored. However, it may be, as I mentioned previously, that there's a set of criteria that we want to add, and it is as simple as this. I can go in and add criteria that says, if it is this type of supplier and this field equals this, then send a different set of T's and C's, backgrounds, and header pages. It is no more complicated than that. You don't need to be a programmer to do it. It's really simple. Your customers can do it. You can do it. You can engage with us at Sicon to do it. The other one that I particularly like in here for the outbound documents is this one here, which is, of course, the ability for your customers to be able to produce statements, but at the same time as producing the statement, it will also reprint any outstanding invoices. So again, these are settings. So I've got all of mine being saved to drafts, as you can see. So when we go into these settings, you can decide whether or not you open the window to send, whether you want to open the email window, whether you send it immediately, whether you include a signature, whether you save it to drafts. And of course, I'm saving that one to drafts. The only one that gives me extra is the statements where, of course, the customer says, oh, I didn't pay that off of that statement because I didn't get the invoice. Can you send it to me? Stalling tactics all the way, guys. So in this scenario, we are preempting that and reprinting any outstanding invoices to go with that statement at the same time. You'll also notice that there are other modules, not just the Sage ones, coming into play here. So our construction solution and our contract solution are present for outbound documentation. So that's document distribution. We're just going to go back to our purchase order. And in our purchase order, we're just going to pop in here and view it. And now you'll see that we've got multiple documents to see. When we go and view our documents, we've got the original copy of the quotation that we attached to the requisition. And we've now got the original copy of the purchase order that was sent out to the supplier. And of course, I can reproduce that at any point in time. So that can actually be emailed off. All your users need in order to be able to see this information is a view license. In order for them to be able to send documentation out and for them to be able to attach documentation inside of Sage, they'll need an attach and view license. Approvals users, my requisitioner, for instance, do not need a documents license at all. They can attach their documents for it to be visible against the purchase order inside of Sage, but no further documents licensed for the approvals users are required. So important to note that it just is incredibly cost-effective way of being able to store documentation and see that information for select users. Okay, so next process is purchase order's gone off to the supplier. The supplier is going to give me a confirmation back. So we're simply just going to pop into here one more time, open that up, and we're just going to attach a new document. Incidentally, you can also make documents compulsory, so a mandatory document. Very relevant if you're doing invoices, but equally as relevant if you are saying, I've got a sales order that goes on, and before we can accept that sales order, we must have the original copy of the purchase order from the client. Therefore, I could make that a mandatory document, and it won't let me save the sales order without attaching that document. Likewise, I could do the same with my purchase order. I could say, can't save it until I've got the original copy of the quote that we had. So there's a variety of different things that you can do behind that. I'm just going to simply go and add a document now. Again, you can add to these titles should you wish to. These are ones which we've configured out of the box. I've added that one in, which was the purchase quote, just manually into my demo environment. You can do likewise. I'm just going to say that it's just a general document. And again, the options are, it can be scanned in, very rare these days, but if it is a paper-based thing, that it can, of course, be scanned in using a Twain-compatible scanner. Whatever is on the flatbed can be scanned in. But the most normal way would be to attach, paste, drag and drop. So email comes in, drag and drop it in. It's the easiest way for you to be able to do that. If it's already resides in a file where it's already sitting, then we can pick it up from there. And again, this time, just to be really simple, we'll just have any document attached in there. So now we've got a variety of documents, and we're creating this single holistic view of all of my documents that relate to a purchase order. I can do likewise on a sales order. I could do likewise against my invoice. We're going to see everything in one single place. So the next thing that's going to happen is goods receipting. Again, I could simply go in and do the goods receipting inside of Sage, but why do that when I've got approvals to do it for me? So let's just go in and show you that the document button does exist though. So if I go in and confirm my goods received here, you'll see that that button will appear at the bottom. So that add documents, as you can see, we actually don't want to go any further with this particular one at this stage. What we're actually going to do is pop ourselves back into approvals just so that Lewis can goods receive that item accordingly. So there it is, 5160. Let's just go in and receive it. I'm going to do a receive all, so it matches the quantity on order to the quantity that we've received. In goes my document number and, of course, the document. So I could attach it inside of Sage. If they're using approvals, they can attach it in here as well. Again, it can be dropped into here, but for the purpose of today's exercise, we're going to keep this one really simple and have anything we like. But for today, it will be a bunch of lilies as my goods receipt note, and we're going to receive my items in. So I'm simply just going to say save to that. And my accompanying documentation will also now be visible against my purchase order inside of Sage. So now we have one single place where everything has now been received. So it's been received in full. And when we go in and actually view my purchase order, we should see that we've now got a variety of documents, including the goods receipt note. So we've now got 4 documents to view. And we can keep on adding more documents in here that are relevant to that journey of that purchase order as it comes through to us. All the while in the background, depending on how and when this has arrived to me as an invoice, document automation could be checking this document too. So let me explain what I mean by that. So our OCR solution, document automation, sits here and has behind it a number of settings which will determine whether or not, number one, a supplier is going to be validated via that route. And number two, whether or not there is criteria that we've set for that particular supplier to force the invoices to match to purchase orders, whether we're looking for a purchase order number, whether we're looking for a project number, or whether or not we're happy for it to go directly to the purchase ledger, so that when invoices arrive, it will know what to do with it. For that reason, we're just going to have a little look at my supplier list, and we're just going to pop ourselves into Everest as a supplier, where we will go in and look at the settings that we switch on with document automation. So in here, and in our document automation, there are a variety of settings that will determine how the invoices that arrive from this supplier are read and how we treat them. The first one, which is our fine tuning, allows us to do things like, say, for instance, on the document that we receive from this supplier, the VAT number is in a particular format, but in here it's something slightly different. We're going to read it against the purchase ledger account, but if it's ever so slightly different and we want to fine tune it, this is where we can do it from here. So we can add things like the redefined VAT number, the account number, the IBAN number, the website or email address, or potentially some custom fine tuning fields that it will look for to be able to identify and validate who that particular supplier is, because that's the first thing that our document automation solution is going to do. The second thing that we do is field extraction. This is really clever. What we can do is separate out certain fields into maybe 2 fields. So I'll give you some practical examples of where that might be appropriate a little later on. We can also teach it things like if culture overrides. So if you've got a particular customer who has multiple suppliers in different regions, then we can apply different date formats accordingly. But these are the most important ones, really, which is what are we looking to validate these invoices against? In the case of Everest, it's looking for an order number. It's also looking to see whether or not that particular order has been goods receipted. So there are parameters that we enter in. Then we've got 2 new fields. One is for sub-suppliers. The practical uses of a sub-supplier may be where you have a single purchase ledger account that has multiple subdivisions within it. Very often you'll get a different invoice layout from the different subdivisions within a single purchase ledger account for your client. And in the old days, we wouldn't have been able to teach the system that this is the invoice layout for this particular supplier because we've already got one model for them. So by having a sub-supplier, we can actually have multiple invoice layouts for a purchase ledger account. So again, very clever. And then the rules really takes our document automation onto the next level. Inside of the rules, you are able to teach the system what to look for and what to apply rules to. So if I create a new rule in here, I can basically say what field we are looking for, what percentage split I give it, and potentially put it out across multiple nominal accounts. So it's basically applying the same rule to something that you know is going to come in. Let's say, for instance, it's an electricity bill that needs to be split across 2 nominal accounts. That's exactly where rules comes into play. So they're the settings that we're looking at. What I've already done in the background is, of course, I've trained my system to understand what the layout is for an Everest invoice. So effectively trained the model. I'm just going to go in to document automation. There is a Dropbox for it, but I'm going to go in and actually process. In my experience, the most common way for a supplier to be able to send in an invoice is to do it via email. So there is a designated email address per company inside of Sage. When I say per company, I don't mean per supplier, I mean per Sage company. That designated email address is effectively an inbox for your suppliers to send their invoices to, and that's where we can read from. In my case today, I'm going to drop it in, but you have both options. So you can either allow your supplier to email it to you, you can drop it in, or the third option, which some people use, is that they actually have the invoices coming into them and they forward them on by email. We're going to use the drop facility. So I'm going to go in and process my invoices and credits. And when I load the documents, you'll see that I've got some pre-existing ones, which need some attention before they can move on. However, create a new one, and here comes my Dropbox, and we're just going to drag my invoice in. That's then going to be read by the system. You'll notice in here that we have 3,043 document bundles remaining out of the 5,100 that was actually applied. That means your users will be able to see how many documents are being used, and they'll be able to keep a tally of that and buy a new bundle of documents when they require them. So when you purchase document automation, you're purchasing the module and you're also purchasing a bundle of documents. The key thing to that is that they don't expire. So if you buy a big bundle of documents, because it's the most cost-effective way to do that, it will not expire and it might take you 3 years. You can buy a small bundle of documents. It might take you a month and a half to use them, and you can buy another bundle of documents and apply that in whatever period you like. And the other thing to also note is that a document is an invoice. So we don't charge per page as such. There's a little bit of fair usage in there. So if you've got 25-page invoices every time, we may need to review that. But at this point in time, a document is a single document that could be 1 or 2 pages. So that's classed as a document. We've brought our invoice in, and as you can see, my invoice for my Sicon standard umbrellas and my kettles has been read by the system. In my case, it's been fully validated. And what that effectively means is that every field has been read and every field has been matched, and it's good to go. So it's been able to recognize who the supplier is. Let's just go back and show you from the account perspective that you can see where it's matched the VAT numbers, and it's also matched the website address. It's given it a score of 2. You can give it a minimum score to match 2. If it doesn't match, you've got all of the options in one single processing screen. We like to refer to this as a portal, because as a portal, I don't need to leave here to be able to do my processing. The hope is that you're going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of invoices, which are all nicely valid, which they can simply say, yeah, go on, then select them all, process them automatically. But in reality, there will always be occasions where we either want to intervene, we want to process it manually and add information, or we need to go in and actually tell the system why it needs attention, or we need to validate it against the supplier. So by doing this in the account information, in my options, I can go in and amend the supplier information. I can amend the fine tuning so it starts to recognize it. I can create a new sub-supplier from here. I don't need to leave this screen to be able to do it and process my invoice. All the while, we're not the ones keying the invoice in. The system has read the invoice. So in the training mode, you'll see it's actually highlighted every field, and it will apply the logic that I applied previously to it. So it's picking up my invoice number, my invoice date from the place on the grid where I've taught it to pick up that invoice number from. It's also picking up the order number. It can also go right down to item line extraction. And as you can see, it understands carriage, and it understands the net value, and it understands the tax value, and it understands the total value for it to be able to validate this. If you want to go right down to item line extraction, you can. And you can also go right down to item line extraction on a straightforward invoice that isn't matching to a purchase order. There's lots of other things that you can do with document automation, which is becoming more and more clever. So I'd invite you to explore that in a bit more detail. At the top of the screen, you'll see that we have our ready to process, what needs attention, also what needs to be receipted. If my purchase order was in a status of not yet received, it would then pop itself into that section so that your users would then be able to see, yeah, that hasn't yet been goods receipted. It's not yet ready to be processed. At any stage, we can force them through. If there's some kind of variance that we're dealing with, we can force them through. That's not an issue if it's the correct thing to do. But it's the ones which are valid, which are the ones that we actually want to process. So just a couple of things on this. If I hadn't fully goods received this item, again, I still don't need to leave this screen to be able to do that. So there's a variety of things that we can do behind this transaction. I can go in and I can view the order or amend the order or confirm the goods received straight from this screen. So if it's sitting in here as needing attention because there's receipt issues, then I can confirm the goods received if that's the right thing to do. I can go in and I can create my sub-suppliers. I can view a supplier. I can amend a supplier. I can go into my transaction inquiry screen. It really is a portal for processing. I can send this particular transaction to query, so I can query the document. I can then assign my document to another user for them to be able to see what is effectively their portal, what's sitting in their portal waiting for them to do. Because it's completely, again, integrated into our approval system, if I do go ahead and process this invoice, which is exactly what I'm going to do, if the right settings are switched on, it will pop itself out for invoice approval as well. So Despite the fact that everything matches for me, I can go in and I can push that through. So as you can see, it isn't just invoices, it's also credits. You may have noticed that as I pulled the document in, it was invoices and credits. In here, we're simply going to go in and say yes to this, and I'm going to process it automatically. If I process it manually, it will actually pop open the transaction screen so that I can actually see the media on the right hand side and enter or amend any of the transaction details that I need to moving it forward. I'm going to go in and process my one automatically. So we'll process our document. That will then become a completed invoice, therefore a completed purchase order. And then when I reload my documents, that one will have disappeared. While we're here, just ever so quickly, I brought this particular one in. I know I did because it says it was created by Michelle. That means I dropped it into here. So in that little email section there, it tells me that this was actually not sent in via email. It was dropped into the system. Just to show you, this one here for Orange, that one was indeed emailed in, and the image, our PDF for that invoice, is attached to the email and therefore is extracted out as the document that we're looking at. So nice and easy. The other thing that you may have also noticed is that it isn't just invoices and credits. It is also your customers' purchase orders to become a sales order for you. So process purchase orders is actually create sales orders. So let's just go in and load my documents. You'll see that I've got a nicely valid one here for Abbey Retail. All that really is going to happen now is that particular purchase order extracted out to line level is going to create for me a brand new sales order when I go in and say, yes, please go and process it automatically. It has validated who my customer is. It looks to see whether or not they're on hold. It looks at each individual line item to make sure that it recognizes it against a stock item. All of those things have been taught to the system. What is it looking for? Is everything valid? Is the pricing correct? And we're simply going to go in and process that one automatically. And again, we'll end up with a live sales order. So let's go in and have a look at both of those transactions now, guys, and it will complete our little journey for today. So we're just going to go back into my purchase order list, where we'll see purchase order 5160, that single document store that has a variety of documents attached to it. It has gone through the process of being as a requisition that was fully approved. So there's my original requisition raised by Lewis. It has now been fully approved and it has been ordered, received and invoiced, and all of the supporting documentation is visible for me in one single place. The original copy of the quote, the order acknowledgement from my supplier, the document that we sent out to the supplier, the goods receipt note that we attached, and the invoice, one single place for us to be able to see all of those documents and reproduce them. And of course, the final piece of the pie, if your users are looking at invoice approval, then we're just going to pop ourselves in here as Michelle, who is my invoice approver, where my invoice will be sitting. There's my Everest invoice, as you can see. The original copy of the invoice is, of course, here for us to be able to see. If this came off the back of an existing requisition, I'd be able to go in and navigate back to the requisition, and then my subsequent approval can be done automatically. So we just simply approve that away, and that then becomes an approved invoice back inside of Sage.